or continue our lecture from where we left off in the previous class. Or yesterday, we were on a research, okay, which sought to investigate the pattern between economic variables, specifically GDP, looking at the non-oil real GDP, okay, rates as against employment within the country, unemployment within the country. And I was making reference to a document or a research conducted by Dr. Said, okay? And basically what we said from that analysis is GDP, okay, is inversely or negatively correlated with what the unemployment, in the sense that as GDP rises, unemployment rate goes down. And where GDP increases, then we have unemployment rates, particularly youth unemployment goes high. Okay, which was a very interesting investigation, okay, from the patterns on GDP, economic patterns and trends. And based on that, side questions some of government policies regarding what we've been doing so far, policies that have been implemented over the years, and how effective it has been toward what? Improving some economic trends like unemployment, like certain basic living conditions within the country. Yeah, so I was on this point here when the network went off. Okay, here it talks about the relationship between GDP, inflation, and CD depreciation also. And once again, we can see per the analysis, okay, that the non-oil GDP is also negatively correlated with what? Inflation rates. Okay, so the higher the inflation rate, the lower the GDP, okay, meaning the lower the levels of productions, okay, general production within the agri services and our industrial sectors, excluding the oil production industry, okay. Good. And the same with the CD depreciation. As our CD also drops, okay, just like inflation, our GDP also drops, okay, meaning the value of our CD, once it goes down, then our production is also affected, okay, productivity is affected as a result, which means that we need to really monitor these economic trends and rates, okay, to make effective decisions, okay, as they are all related to what the state or the conditions of people within the given state. Now, today's class, we're going to continue. I'm going to continue with a very interesting patterns. In fact, we wanted to look at the labor force report, but I came across a very interesting website, okay, which will be very useful for us in terms of getting access to various trends, okay, in various sectors within our economy. So I take you to that very page, and then we examine some few things. You may want to take note of the page, and possibly later you try and investigate what happens here. So when we come here, we have a lot of statistics on various aspects of the economy, from the population, economy, trade, health, education, development, labor force, environment, crime, immigration, and others. Okay, and particularly when it comes to I'm under the section of population. Okay, we talk about population patterns, growth rates, density, urban life expectancy. Okay, so we'll just take a look at some interesting one, which will be the population. We'll look at the life expectancy. And the interesting thing about this page is The data is also available, okay, for download. The source is the WHO. Okay, so that is quite a reliable, okay, site for getting information on these various aspects of the economy. So on population, once we click on population, we're going to have the graph and the data for population in Ghana since 1991. Sometimes the data goes as far as to pre-colonial days. So that is the graph here. I brief. So let's it's approaching from 1951. We get that data from data sets. We want it from probably 19. Okay, we are looking at it from 1990 to 2022. Okay, and let me just click on that. Yeah, so it gives us a projection of what we have. Just a little over 30 million. Okay, projections are showing us a trend, an upward trend in the population size within what our country, and these are the rate of change. Okay, the rate at which population seems to be increasing. Now, there are other interesting patterns like life expectancy, which is always of interest to us. So for life expectancy, like we can see here, okay, we can also see life expectancy currently rising. This is a projection. Okay, the current value for life expectancy, I think, is around 58 years. So let me put it at 2022. Yeah, so life expectancy, okay, currently the projection from WHO data is around 64.2, 64.6 years, okay? Rising all the way from over a little bit around 41.6 all the way to 64.6 in the current year. Okay, so it means that we are doing well when it comes to life expectancy. We also have rates which pertains the birth rate, death rate, infant mortality rate, okay, and the fertility rate in the country. So once we talk about population, we're also very much interested in the fertility rates, okay, in the country, because that is very much related. Okay, so when we look at fertility rate, birth per woman, we can clearly see a drop, okay, in fertility rates. Currently, this is where we are at, okay, so that is about 3.6 as against around a peak of 6.9 around somewhere. Let's take it from 1970, okay, to 2002. So 2020. Yeah, so we can clearly see that as at 1970, we're somewhere around 7, but now fertility rate has decreased, okay? So even though population is increasing, the rate at which population, like we saw earlier, is decreasing because fertility rates are also what? Are also decreasing, okay? If we have a case where fertility rates are also increasing, then we have cause for concern, because very soon it means that we are going to be overpopulated in the country, and the land area we have, okay, is going to be limited, and we're going to have challenges with land within the country. Now, there are other interesting statistics which I would like you to explore further. So when it comes to economic trade, what are some of the key areas we look at? Economic, we've looked at some already, like the GDP, like the CPI. Okay, we have something like the GDP. Okay, we have GDP growth rate, we have GDP per capita, not GNP, okay, per capita. These are key areas. Inflation rates, okay, and of course, inflation, CPI, PPI, all measuring the rate of inflation. So these are key things and economic measures, okay, which we are usually interested in for decision making. When we look up here at the graph, we can clearly see what patterns in the GDP per billion of US Ghana dollars. Okay, and we can see that we are doing well, but like we just saw from Dr. Said's report, you could see that a lot of a great proportion of this GDP, okay, is contributed by the oil sector, which means that the non-oil sector is not performing so well. Okay, and that is the area where we have a lot of youth and a lot of people being employed, which automatically suggests or explains, okay, the high levels of unemployment within the country. Okay, same with the per capita, okay, GDP in US dollars. Okay, very well. So these are some very interesting trends, and it's good to take note of the website, and after class you can just investigate. I have a number of the data sets downloaded from this site, which we'll be using in trend analysis. Okay, in our next class we'll be starting with time series analysis, okay, on this economic and health data. Okay, good. Now to wrap up our class, okay, so when it comes, I think we've looked at health already. Yeah, so on health too, these are key things we need to report on. Okay, things like maternal mortality rates. We need to be talking about healthcare spending, smoking rates, and there are so many other measures, but these are three key things which we are usually interested in, okay, especially when it comes to maternal mortality rates, okay. It helps to know the status of our hospitals and our health system and sector, okay, compared to other states. Now, another interesting thing, so we can clearly see that from 2000 to 2019, there have been a clear decline, okay, per 1,000 live births, okay. So we are talking about deaths, okay, let's be very sure about that. So we are talking about mortality per every live birth that is made, okay, and the trends are decreasing. And the interesting thing about this chart, it also gives us the room to compare, okay, our performance with other countries. Okay, so when you come just below the chart, you see we have similar country rankings, and in terms of Ghana maternal mortality rates, okay, currently we are lying around 308, okay, 308, and when you come to countries within our ranking, we are falling close to, let's say, eighth, okay, within what our let's say neighboring African states, okay, or states within our classification which are developing countries. Okay. Good. Yeah. So basically, one thing about these patterns we are seeing here all has to do with the GDP and the income of the state. Once GDP is increasing, then the state can afford to input or to invest more resources in the health, in education, in trade, and in so many areas to also improve the lifestyles. Okay. So once we plot correlations between our life expectancy, our income, the rate of maternal mortality and income, we are going to get some levels of positive correlation there. But there are other economic variables which also influence what our income, like the inflation and to a large extent government policies that are made, okay, in the long run do have effect our performances, okay, good, in terms of our GDP within the state. Now, we want to look at areas, just a minute, let me. Yeah, the trend we can clearly see there is an upward trend, but a lot of paths and cycles within this data. Okay, so this is plot for the GDP since 1988 to 2020. Okay, a more reflective graph will be for us to select data from around the 2000s. Okay, since there was a rebasing around 2010. Okay, we can select our data from, let's say, 2005. Uh, let's go a bit to 2000 and 2005. Yes, to 2020 and examine the pattern within the data set. Yes. So this is the pattern, like we can see. We can clearly see a trend. When I say a trend, I mean an upward increase, okay, in this data. So generally, we can see that the GDP is increasing, okay, from 2005, where we have the lowest, all the way to 2020. And we can also observe a sharp increase between what 2012 and 2013. There was a very sharp increase, okay, in the GDP, and another sharp, yes, a sharp decline from 2013 to 2014. Okay, good, and we declined all the way to the end of 2015. So a decline from 2013 all the way to 2015. Then we could also see an economic progress in terms of the GDP from 2015 all the way to 2020. Now, this is one way of displaying what graphs on economic data, or what you call as the descriptives of time series data. Okay, another way to do this is using another computer software we call as SPSS or even R. Okay, so once we come to class, I'll be introducing you to the software, okay, for analyzing a number of this economic data. I'm not seeing SPSS here. Good. So we have, I think that is not yet opened. Once I open it, it will slow down the process a bit. So when we meet in class, in our next meeting, we are going to look at SPSS, which will be used, okay, to predict what we call as time series in terms of forecasting economic data, or let's say any random data, to identify the trends, the seasonalities, and the cyclical trends, as well as irregularity within the path, which should help us to what? Forecast into the future. Good. So for your assignment, you are just supposed to examine some of these patterns, and also try to examine the relationship between the variables. Okay. Yeah, until we get to class in the next meeting. Okay. I'm going to send some additional material in terms of definitions for health and some economic variables for you to just study them, so you can know how the calculations are being made. But the key focus is how do we deal with this economic data, and how do we identify patterns within this data and to forecast into the future. So that will be the focus for our class in the next meetings. If you have any questions, you can ask at this moment. If there are any questions, you can ask. Yeah, any questions, class? Any questions? Okay. So if there are no questions, then we'll bring, okay. Salifo has a question. Yes, Salifo.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, evening.
Yes, sir. Checking on the, what do you call it? The way, the trend of the graph.
Yes.
What might be the prominent cause of the rise from say 2009 to 2014, 15?
Yeah.
And what might be the it that we lost again, that we fall, the things happen to fall again?
Okay. Why the sharp rise, and then why the basically it comes down to policies that are put in place. Okay, so if you study within that particular trend, let's say around 2012 to 2013, that was I think Professor Mills's time, right? If I'm not wrong. Yes. So measures that are put by the government, and Mills was focusing on, he had his eye on how do we call it? Planting for food within the country. So there was a lot of focus into getting people employed and opening industries and all that. Okay, and once more food industries are being opened and jobs are being created for people to work, then it means overall we are going to produce more in terms of food in the agricultural sector. We are going to produce more in terms of industrial production, and we are also going to produce more in terms of services. And once we increase our production, it automatically affects what? The gross production, you understand, which will affect our GDP of the country. But when the reverse takes place, where we are collapsing our industries and some government policies are not being implemented properly, then we begin to see a decline. Then again, another thing with this whole thing is, automatically once population growth is going up, people want to create more opportunities, more businesses are being opened, which means that automatically from that point of view to more services are being rendered naturally, and more jobs are also being created naturally, which will affect our GDP. Okay, but as to whether that will reflect in our per capita is another point, okay, because per capita now looks at the ratio of the GDP as to the population size. So you need to look at it from that point of view when it comes to trying to implement the aspect of population into the growth of our products and goods that are produced within the nation.
Okay, so if I understand you, it means that a government can be doing well,
Yeah.
but it may not have a rise due to the rise in population outside its regime.
Yeah. So that could be the reason. But yes, the government could be doing well, but per the number of the population increase, okay, the GDP per capita might not really show the performance, because GDP per capita will be looking at how much income you are earning as a country, okay, based on all the goods and services on an individual person. So if there are just few people working, few people employed, and they are working hard, at the end of the day, the number of people who are unemployed, so that will not show. And if it does not show, yes, then obviously it also suggests to us that the government or the state of the nation as a whole, okay, we are not doing well as a nation. Okay. So it is better to have more people employed with good jobs so that they can also contribute to the economy. Then we can see a very smooth rise in our GDP as well as in the GDP per capita within our country.
Okay, sir.
Good. Okay, any other question? Any other question? Okay. So in the absence of any question, I think we'll bring our class for today to an end. We'll be meeting God willing next week. Okay. We'll meet God willing next week, and for I think it will also be I'm not so sure. Course rep, you have to. I think it will be a physical class, so we can hold a practical section in class. Okay, that is going to be a practical class. So we'll surely have our time series practical session. Mid semester is around 7th week. This is the 5th lecture, so that should be next 2 weeks, if I'm not wrong. That should be next 2 weeks. So next week we'll be doing the practical. The next 2 weeks, next 2 weeks will be online, but I'll have to find out what the arrangements are as to whether we'll come to school to write exams or we have to wait to 8 week, okay, to take the mid semester examination. Then again, please check your LMS. Posting all your materials there, your slides, and the assignment. I allow some of you to send it to my email, but please and please again, make sure to post it on LMS, because that is where I'll grade them. So if you don't submit on LMS, you'll not get a score for the mid semester. Take note of that. So on that note, we'll bring our class to a conclusion. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and see you all in class next week, God willing. Bye-bye.